look, John Wick Chapter 4 is out. Let's talk about some of the things that you might have missed in it. Spoilers, by the way.
Sounds perfect.
Despite none of the other movies in the franchise having anything after the credits started rolling, Chapter 4 made like a bona fide Marvel movie and did a little bit of future setup for either a sequel or a spin-off.
If that's what you really desire.
Since I'm sure that many of you, like me, missed it, let's talk about what happened. The scene shows Kane walking with a bouquet of flowers as he goes to reunite with his daughter, after finally becoming free of the High Table's control over him. The relatively happy scene quickly turns dour, however, when we see Akira approaching him, walking as if she has a purpose, which she apparently does, as she pulls out a knife shortly before the whole thing cuts to black. Now, could this be set up for a future movie set within the John Wick universe? If I had to venture a guess, more than likely. We already know we're getting at least 2 such projects in the form of the Continental and Ballerina, so things are expanding. Surely there could be room for either a Kane or Akira-led project. Or perhaps it is simply meant to just somewhat reveal the fate of Donnie Yen's character post John Wick's passing. Now let's move on to some Easter eggs and stuff like that. John Wick is one of those film franchises that I think pretty much everyone everywhere loves. I mean, come on, have you seen those action set pieces? It's really hard to say no. If you are a bit of a cinephile though, you probably got a kick out of a few extra little nods to famous movies that are sprinkled throughout Chapter 4. One of the big ones, that is probably the easiest for most people to spot, is the reference to Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill duology, which is quite appropriate, given that it's a pair of films dealing with the world of elite assassins, one of whom is dragged back in order to enact revenge for those who wronged them. Anyways, after Kane kills Akira's father, he tells her that he will be waiting for her to try to take revenge on him in the future. This is extremely similar to a moment from the first Kill Bill.
I'll be waiting.
Outside of Kill Bill, we also got a nice reference to Lawrence of Arabia in Chapter 4. In that classic movie, we saw an iconic cut, where Lawrence blows out a match, perfectly transitioning into a shot of a desert sunrise. In Chapter 4, we got pretty much the exact same shot, when the Bowery King blows out a match, allowing for a transition to a shot of the desert, where we quickly see Wick engaging in one of the many insane action set pieces in this movie. Undoubtedly, as I watch the movie a few more times, I'll probably catch at least a couple references that I didn't see opening night. But that's just what I saw in my initial watch. If you see any other references, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. Actually, you know what? I did catch another movie reference. Though this isn't a direct homage to any one film, but instead a little behind-the-scenes connection to a lot of other movies. You know the scene where Wick meets up with the Bowery King and Winston in a Paris subway station? Well, it was filmed at the Porte des Lilas, which I guarantee that I absolutely butchered the pronunciation of. Anyways, moving on. This particular platform has been seen in a lot of movies. In fact, just about any time you see the Paris metro system in a film, odds are it's this specific platform. That's because this particular station keeps a disused but still fully operational platform nearby, specifically for use within movies. They do this so that productions can use a platform without having to disrupt actual train travel within the city. Something that can wind up costing a lot of time and a lot of money. So that next time you're watching a movie set in Paris that features the subway, try to keep that in mind. Listen, making movies is hard, especially when you're making a bunch of films set within a single franchise. Because of that, sometimes recasting has to happen. And we got a small bit of recasting within John Wick Chapter 4. So small, in fact, that you may not have even noticed it. In Chapter 3, we met the Elder, the head of the High Table. This guy was kind of a big deal, and was performed with aplomb by actor Zaid Tamawi. In Chapter 4, however, this role was given to actor Georges Georgiou, for some reason. As of the recording of this video, we have pretty much no idea why this recasting was necessary in the first place. But perhaps the original actor was just too busy and couldn't make it work? Perhaps it was a bit of studio intervention? Or maybe it had something to do with how much smaller of a role the Elder had in this movie, only really saying a few brief words before Wick did what Wick do. As I said before, the part was so small in this movie that you might not have even noticed to begin with, but now you know. Speaking of actors, there was one recognizable face that you might not have known was even there. Does the name Scott Adkins ring any bells to you? This guy has a filmography that would make most actors jealous, and yet very few of them are what one would consider big budget or blockbuster movies. which is a shame because he is crazy talented. And we got a chance to see his talent on display in Chapter 4, as he took on the role of Killa, the rotund gangster. This part differs quite drastically from most of Adkins' roles, mainly due to the extensive prosthetic work that it took to take the absolutely jacked and chiseled Adkins and turn him into the deadly jelly roll that we saw on screen. This movie also marks the second time that Adkins has worked alongside Kane actor Donnie Yen, as the two faced off a few years prior in Ip Man 4, the finale. Speaking of Donnie Yen's career, Donnie Yen has had a very storied career within action movies, before he even made the leap into the world of John Wick. And in fact, a lot of people within the cast can say pretty much the same exact thing. One example is everyone's favorite shell-bound fast food entrepreneur, Harbinger, Clancy Brown.
The enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand.
Brown has had roles in everything from The Shawshank Redemption to Starship Troopers to A Nightmare on Elm Street. But the one that I personally remember him most for is his part in Highlander as the malicious Kurgan. You know who else appeared in the sword-bound action series about immortals? Donnie Yen, who had a part in Highlander Endgame. Sadly, we didn't get to see either one behead the other in Chapter 4, or even cross blades, but still, a cool little connection there. But you know what makes this even cooler? The Highlander connections don't just stop there, as John Wick director Chaz Stahelski is currently working on pre-production on a Highlander reboot. If he can pull that off at the level of awesome he has with the John Wick franchise, I'll be there day one. Of course, the dude also has a literal laundry list of movies that he's attached to direct or produce, including a Rainbow Six movie, so it might be a while before Highlander comes out, but still, I'm looking forward to it. Movies can be kinda crazy sometimes. The worlds in which the characters live are often chaotic and full of danger around every turn, which is probably why the drivers on the Parisian streets don't seem to mind the rampant gun crime and people being unalived left and right. During a sequence on the streets of Paris, the civilian drivers around the area can very clearly see the action going on, including some really crazy kills. And yet, they don't even so much as speed up. A similar thing happened during the club shootout, where many civilians just kept on dancing as if nothing horrifying and potentially very dangerous was going on around them. I guess in the world of John Wick, a little thing like being in the middle of a hail of gunfire must be like a normal Tuesday for them. Taking the John Wick franchise international has allowed the world to expand beyond the confines of the busy American urban streets of the first movie. For example, look at the high table soldiers in John Wick Chapter 3. Pretty bog standard Black Ops looking dudes with your typical military gear and stuff like that. Now look at the high table troops, but from Osaka, Japan. They are, yes, wearing the tactical gear that we would all expect them to, but they are also wearing a traditional Japanese mask. Those are Mempo, a type of facial armor historically worn by samurai and other warriors back during the age of feudal Japan. Often made out of either leather or metal, sometimes a combination of both, these intricate masks not only serve to protect the wearer's face, but also help to secure a samurai's helmet, or kabuto, to their head. In the case of the soldiers we see in John Wick Chapter 4, these masks don't really do much to actually protect them from, bullets and stuff. However, there is definitely something to be said about the psychological benefits of the mask, which is actually partially the reason why they were historically designed to look like the faces of demons back in the day. In interviews and such, Keanu Reeves has said that he is open to appearing as the character of John Wick in the future, after a little bit of a break from the action franchise. But it's kinda hard to imagine how, considering the character's fate at the end of Chapter 4. But who knows? I personally wouldn't complain about a little bit more John Wick.